Welcome to Building Great Sales Teams, a show dedicated to making sales teams tick, tick, boom. Great sales teams are not recruited, they are built, block by block. Let's get to work.
Here.
How's my audio? Is my audio solid?
Yeah, you're great. How do you say your last name?
Schlinsky.
Schlinsky?
Schlinsky.
So just like it's spelled. Awesome.
Yep. 4 consonants in a row. Pretty strange. SCH. No vowel. Interesting.
Where are you from, or where's your family from, I should say?
So my great grandparents were from Poland.
Okay.
They moved after World War I because they were afraid being Jews in Poland was dangerous. They were correct. After World War I,
smart people.
States, thankfully, otherwise I might not be here. They moved after World War I, but we don't actually know what their original Polish name was. They shifted it from whatever it was to Schlinsky. So our family joke is that it was all the Jewish names combined. So it was like Schlinsky, Oppenstein, Hamburg, Goldstein, blah, 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 and they just shortened it to Schlinsky. But we don't actually. We think it was probably Schlinskyzik, which is like the CYZK at the end of Polish names, which is like an impossible thing to say for most Americans. So that's why they changed it. We don't know though exactly, but that's my family's heritage.
That's awesome. It's always awesome to have a good story like that. Mine,
yeah, especially when your first name is Alex, which is pretty much the most standard name you can have. So yeah. I'm really interested in names too. It's like a really interesting thing for me.
Yeah, you catch them on the back end. You're like Alex Schlinsky.
Yeah.
All right, brother. Let me get your profile pulled up here and we'll get rolling.
Sounds good.
I don't think I can cover the whole thing. There's a lot going on here.
Do whatever you got to do. It'll be fine. We'll just have a good time and hang.
Awesome, man. All right, guys, welcome back. We've got Alex Schlinsky here. He's an entrepreneur, coach, speaker, and CEO of Prospecting on Demand. They call him Iron Man of Marketing, which is a badass name. Once I saw that, I was like, I've got to get this guy on the podcast. I got to hear the story behind that. And something to do with open heart surgery.
Yes, sir.
Fantastic. Alex has also sold $15 million worth of products, worked with over 700 clients in 50 different markets, including some of the world's greatest brands like the Miami Dolphins and the UFC.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's awesome. So let's get right into it. Let's get into that story. Iron Man of Marketing. Where does that come from?
So yeah, I'll give you a quick breakdown. First off, man, thanks so much for having me, Doug, and everyone listening.
Absolutely.
Taking the time. So yeah, quick little backstory. When I was younger, my dad was a funeral director for 20 or so years. I'm the youngest of 3 kids that he has. And one day he decided to quit that job because unfortunately he ended up burying a lot of people that weren't meant to be buried yet. And having a young kid that he had to come home to see every day was wearing on him significantly. So he became an entrepreneur pretty late in life, around like 38, 40 years old, started a financial planning business, and within 2 years became very successful. Now, in my mind, the only reason I knew that things had changed was because my dad's car went from a Nissan Saturn, I think it was, or an Altima, and then now he had a Lexus. Our trips were to go to Disney, and now we're going on a 7-day cruise to Alaska. So nice. You're not like really up to snuff when you're 10 or 11 years old, but you can get the idea something had changed. Unfortunately, about a year after that, my dad got very sick. He had a stroke out of nowhere, completely shocked everyone. He had 2 years dealing with this terrible experience. Thank God he's alive and well today and totally fine, but we weren't, it was very touch and go for a while. He had a lot of significant health issues. And ultimately what we learned was my dad's financial planning business was really a freelance job because without him working, there was no one to support or help or build from there. So as soon as he got sick, everything kind of fell apart financially for my family. It became very, very challenging. And that became the reason why about 10 years later, I wanted to start my own company where I wasn't going to be the sole proprietor of the business, but learning how to build a company with other people to help me grow. And that's what I did for about 6 years. And then I had my own exact experience that my dad had. But this time it was a little bit different. So I was told when I was 18 years old that I would have to have open heart surgery at some point in my life. I ended up being born with what is called a bicuspid aortic valve. Your aortic valve is supposed to open like a Mercedes-Benz sign or a peace sign. Mine opened in a semicircle. So because of that, it would open up and blood would leak back into the heart. So when your heart gets overworked, just like any other muscle, it ends up growing in size. The anticipation by the doctors at that point was that, oh, I need the surgery when I was 40 or 50. Fast forward 10 years later, 29 years old, 28 years old, I was told I need to have the surgery. And I had it on October 15th, 2020. I actually had to wait 10 months for the surgery because of COVID, which was very shitty and a bad experience. I'll never forget this call, Doug. I called them March 2020, right after COVID broke out. And I was being scheduled for April 2020 to have the surgery. And the lady on the phone says, your surgery has been postponed to at least October due to us not doing any elective surgeries. And I freaked out at her on the phone. I'm like, elective? I'm not choosing this. What are you talking about? She's like, sir, elective means any non-emergency surgeries, blah, blah, blah. So I had to deal with that for some time, about 8 months. I waited until I had the surgery. And basically what they did is they put a piece of carbon inside of my heart. Carbon is a metal. So thus I became the Iron Man of marketing. Unfortunately, not as handsome as Robert Downey Jr. or a billionaire, but that's okay. I don't hold anything against him for that. That was the little moniker my team gave me after a 6-day hospital stay, thankfully living through it. I do have a mechanical heart, or a piece of my heart is mechanical. My team sent me a Robert Downey Jr. Iron Man heart from the Marvel.
That's awesome.
That's what I came
freaking awesome.
I have that on my desk in my office. That was a really cool experience. And it's pretty crazy. If we're quiet, you won't be able to hear it on the podcast, but if we're sitting next to each other and we're quiet, my heart ticks like a Timex watch because
no freaking way.
Carbon watch. So quick, funny side story for you on this. I went to go see A Quiet Place, the movie with John Krasinski.
Oh, yeah.
Probably like, I don't know, 8 to 10 months after my surgery. My wife doesn't watch any scary movies, so I went by myself. And the people next to me were like, I could tell they were like, what the hell is that sound? So I whispered over to the guy. I'm like, sorry, that's my heart. And then as soon as I did that, I realized that is a really weird statement for him to hear. What the fuck is going on? So as soon as the movie ended, I'm like, sorry about that weird comment. I had surgery, blah, blah. And he's like, yeah, I was really weirded out by that. What do you mean your heart? Because a lot of people think I have a watch. So that's how the entire kind of business was framed and what the Iron Man marketing is all about.
Dude, that is a hell of a story.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
And you can tell you genuinely enjoy telling it too. But I want to unpack a few things there. You know, the story about your dad, because I think that's huge. You know, so much of our childhood shapes, you know, how we develop as entrepreneurs. Definitely. And some of us learn from it and some of us don't, right? And so you saw your dad go through that and you recognize, hey, he's a business of one, right? Which, you know, is very attractive at first. And then you realize like, hey, as soon as I go down, or as soon as I want to take a vacation, or as soon as I want to, you know, take some time away, whatever the case is, or go through something personal, all of a sudden the rainmaker's not there, the accountant's not there, the marketing division's not there. You know what I mean? Everybody's gone. The business just stops, right? Absolutely. And you just got to deal with customer service if you haven't, you know, existing clients and stuff like that. So I guess, you know, how did you recognize that early on, or was it just the effect of the whole situation and it kind of stayed with you as you got older?
I definitely did not recognize it early on because I was a freshman in high school when it happened. Mm-hmm. I think at that point, I had never had any sort of very challenging experience in my life. There was no formative experiences, thankfully, prior to being, I think maybe I was 15 at the time, I believe. Mm-hmm. I also had 2 older brothers to help me and support me, and my mom as well. My mom, ironically, had retired 6 months prior from a job that she was an entrepreneur, created her art studio in Aventura, Florida, you know, served 1,000 students for a decade. And she was able to quit because my dad's success. And then obviously that didn't work out very long. Yeah. I did not realize it at the time. It was a retrospect realization. At the time, I think I was going through just emotional trauma. The real crazy thing, Doug, is I don't remember a lot of it. I think my brain blacked out a large majority because it was so traumatic. You know, my dad and I are very, very close still today. incredibly grateful. He gets to meet his son, my 15-month-old, who was in my wife's belly 5 months pregnant when I had my surgery, which was shitty. 0 out of 5 stars. Do not recommend it.
Yeah.
But
That's rough.
I didn't realize it until I probably went to college. And the reason why I started my marketing agency working with personal injury attorneys was I thought I was going to go to school for law school. I was very intrigued by it because my next door neighbor wasn't a personal injury attorney. And the summer between college and freshman year, or actually it was junior and senior year, I did an internship with him. And I'll never forget it. We go into his car. He's kind of a little bit of a heavy set man. We get into a small BMW convertible. He has his cup holder is actually an ashtray. There was like 60 things in there. It was absolutely nasty. And he gets in the car, he slams the door. I'm all dressed up all nice. And he asked me, we're going to court for the first time. I'm all amped and excited. He said, "Why do you want to become personal injury attorney?" And I gave him whatever spiel I had I was all excited, 17 years old. Oh, this is why, blah, blah, blah. It's like, awesome. My goal is to make sure that you're not a personal injury attorney. It's the worst job ever. I was just like, wow, that was very unexpected. So worked with him for a couple months, and he was really ahead of the game. Facebook had just released business pages for the first time. And obviously now in 2022, business pages get 0 reach. But at that time, they were getting a lot of reach because Facebook was in the position of wanting to start generating money through ads. For many of you that are younger, you may not know Facebook originally as a social network had no advertising, and they had no way to make money outside of sponsored apps, which used to be the main thing on Facebook for a while. So he knew that Facebook was going to be big, and he asked me to start posting for him something every single day on Facebook from the NHTSA, which is the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. And then I started doing constant contact newsletters. So did that for him for a year for $1,000 a month. And the reason that I started realizing what had happened to my dad in retrospect a few years before was because when I went to college, I had to take out student loans to pay for school because unfortunately, my family could not afford to pay for it, which is fine, very standard thing. So I had to create this opportunity to get more clients. So I asked this attorney that I worked with if he went to law school with anyone in Orlando that could potentially become a client. And he sent me 20 people and 10 of them became clients. So immediately at 18 years old, basically, I had a $10,000 a month company. But I don't think my brain was entrepreneurial enough then to realize the opportunity I had in front of me. But I did quickly realize how much weight was on me, meaning if I got sick or if something happened, I wouldn't be able to do it. And that was the time that I was forming in retrospect, realizing this is why the situation was so bad. This is why my dad has now hired more people after the fact. This is why things got so difficult after, because my dad had a very unexpected experience in his life that led to him not being able to play, right? Him not being able to work. And when that happens, if you weren't prepared for it, I realized pretty quickly that he hadn't created a business, he created a job. And I realized that while I was going through college, because ultimately, if I didn't have any help, I couldn't do it myself. And that's where my girlfriend and I, who's now my wife.
Saw that pattern repeating.
Exactly. So that's how I learned it. It wasn't during the time. I think during the time I was coping, but as soon as I started my own business, then that was when I realized what my dad had really gone through and what the experience was, especially now that at that point he was starting to recover and be healthy. And it gave me a little more time to reflect more appropriately.
No, that's great. I mean, and, I always say that entrepreneurs are just like anybody else, like basketball players, football players, artists. At the end of the day, we're born with certain talents, and for me, it's the ability to replace myself, and for you, it may be the ability to recognize that while you're in it. You know what I'm saying? It's hard to put a name on that type of talent, the ability to scale.
Yeah. Delegation is a good skill.
Right. And it comes to some of us naturally, like it did for me early on. And I was motivated not by a story like your dad. I was more motivated that my company, we knocked doors initially. You know what I'm saying? I didn't want to knock doors. So I had to figure out how to replace myself. So I wasn't the one out there knocking doors. And then I wasn't the one out there training people. And then I wasn't the one in the field managing the guys and so on and so forth, and then my company scaled because I had motivation. And, but one of the things that we talk about a lot on this show is, because I have a lot of people listening, especially in the construction field. I don't know why construction guys love my show, but they always listen to it. And it's typically because they have their operations built out. They have even some of their marketing built out, or they have it outsourced. You know what I'm saying? But they still do the sales themselves. You know, and a lot of what I teach is building great sales teams. Right? That's the name of the podcast.
Same.
And it is just another form of delegation. Right? And so I guess my question to you is, and you don't have to frame it inside sales. Don't worry about that part. But my question to you is, okay, you went from that to the business that you have now, you know, doing, what was it, 50 million in product sales?
Yes, sir.
You obviously had to build out departments, divisions, you know,
Absolutely.
Delegate like crazy. Where did you even start?
Great question. And I actually have a 4-step process for it that I think is really cool for most people to consider. The 4-step process are: you do the job first. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You build an SOP for the job so that it can be replicated. You hire someone to follow the SOP to do the job. And then the fourth and final and most important by a country mile is letting them fail. Now, I didn't say let them succeed. I said let them fail. I'm going to do the 4 steps one more time so we're clear. You do the job. You build an SOP for the job. You hire someone to execute the SOP to do the job. And then you let them fail. Now, that 4th step is the really most challenging one for 99% of entrepreneurs, because ultimately they use 2 pieces of crutches, 2 mantras as a crutch. Either one, I could do it faster myself, which mathematically does not add up, or two, they can do it that they can't do it as good as me. Both of those are crutches. And I just want to break down those objections pretty simply. I use this framework on the element of letting them fail related to the timeline. Most of the time people say they can do it fast themselves is because they don't want to build the SOP. They don't want to go through the hiring. They don't want to QA or do management. And they also don't want them to fail when they do it incorrectly, or if they do it not as good as them. The framework is pretty simple. If you have a task that takes you an hour to do, okay, and you say, I could do that faster myself, and you say that every single day of every working day of the year, let's estimate for the sake of this, podcast, to keep it simple, that it's 250 days. That is 250 hours a year minimum that you were saying, I can do it faster myself. What I explain is, if you double the amount of time that you do the task twice, 2 times, you can build a very, very solid SOP. And here's how. It's a very simple method. We call it the brain dump method. First thing you have to do is simply write out exactly what you are doing. Write out exactly what you are going to be doing. Now, the reason why this takes more time is because when you do it, you're doing it consciously or unconsciously. You're not writing out what you're doing. So you have to do it and you have to write it out. So you say, okay, I open up this website. You write down, open up this website. Then I go to the next page and you go to the next page. So you're writing everything down step by step. Normally an hour-long task will take 2 hours to do and document. Do and document, the D&D process is what we call it, okay? Then the next time you use that SOP that you created in the actually creating it, and you follow the SOP. You do nothing off your memory, which is a very common thing that people do. You follow only SOP. Naturally, that second time, you're gonna realize that there's gaps for things that you did not put in as a step. Then you go back into the document and you highlight the gap that you put in between steps 2 and 3. Now you have a new step. It's highlighted. The third and final time you go through it, there should be no gaps. So you've probably taken now 5 or 6 hours to do a 1-hour task 3 times. So normally it would have been 3 hours total. Now it was 5 or 6 hours. But the 250 hours we spoke about over the year can now be delegated. So I asked you to trade 6 hours for 244 hours. Would you make that trade? And the answer is, of course, yes. Now, the problem with most people is they're afraid to allow that person to fail. The reality is, because they're thinking no one can do it as good as me. You don't need anyone to do it as good as you. You probably only need them to do it 75 to 80% as good as you, because that will be enough for your clients. Most people, especially ones doing it themselves, like Atlas Shrugged, carrying the world on their shoulders, doing everything from prospecting to sales to client acquisition to fulfillment to hiring to productivity to client communication and everything in between. You're probably a perfectionist. Most people like really overemphasize each element, and you're afraid that the person you hire won't be. That's okay, because your clients aren't asking for perfection. They're asking for results. And those are very 2 different things. So if you can get someone that can make mistakes, they can learn faster. One of the frameworks I like using, Doug, is this idea of the only wrong decision is indecision. When you're undecided about whether or not you should hire out or delegate, what you're doing is you're withholding yourself from saving time and creating a better client experience at scale. So what happens is when you realize if you make a decision that you're fearful of being wrong, think of it this way instead. Any wrong decision is a faster way to get to the right decision. Because the stakes are so low, you're not my heart surgeon that actually nicks me, kills me, I'm dead, and then says, oh, I'll get the next one, no worries. You probably sell some sort of product. Okay, so you probably messed up one sale. Big whoop. You learn from how that sale didn't go correctly. Then you can do better on the next one. That's the same thing for why that fourth step is letting them fail. You're right. They'll probably make a mistake. Maybe you forgot something in your SOP, but as soon as they make that mistake, you'll know about it, they'll know about it, and you can optimize it to not make it again. That's why it's so important to let them fail. Last note on this indecision idea. It's really important, and this is a great sales strategy to consider. When you're on a sales conversation and someone is undecided, remember to tell them that the only wrong decision is indecision, and give them these 3 frameworks. It's really easy. If you make this decision, let's say it's the right decision, you get the result that you want. Let's use an example just for the sake of it. We'll use a construction business. Construction business wants more jobs. I'm a marketer and I say that I can get you more jobs. So if you are the construction person on the other side of the phone deciding whether or not to invest $5,000 a month in my service, option 1 is you make this investment for $5,000 and I get you back $20,000 from your investment and you're happy with that, right? You would do that every time. Option 2 is you say no to this investment. You try something else or get another call and eventually decide on a different decision. Option 3 is the worst of the decisions, which is no decision. It's the, I need to think about it. I need to consider it. I need to talk to my partner about it. I need to sleep on it. I want to start next month. I want to start in 6 months. The thing that you are guaranteed by not making a decision is either staying in the exact spot that you have, or worse, moving backwards, because the people in front of you, competition, are making the decisions. That's why it's so important to make decisions confidently, even if you are fearful in retrospect that it's the wrong decision, because every prerequisite of success is failure. That's why the 4-step process is you do the job, you build the SOP, you hire someone, and you let them fail. Because when you let them fail, it's guaranteed they will eventually succeed. That's the framework.
No, that's beautiful. And incredibly tactical. And I really appreciate that because, you know, so many, I guess, explanations of things like that are more based around nuances and mindset and stuff like that, rather than an actual tactical 4-step process, which is huge. One thing that I would add too is, you know, and I always tell my clients is a lot of what you're paying me to do is to get what's in here out of here and onto paper so you can train a salesperson on how to do it. You know what I'm saying? But the easiest way that you can do that yourself, if you can't afford a consultant, you know what I mean, or afford a coach like yourself, is simply your next sales call, whether it be over the phone, in person, on the doors, you know, it doesn't matter, B2B, just hit record, hit a voice memo and hit record, you know what I mean? And listen to yourself.
Love this. So important. So if you're on this podcast right now and you're a sports fan, if you are, this will really resonate with you. If not, just hear me out for a sec. How do athletes get better, Doug? Right? They do 2 things. Okay. They have coaches, right, that tell them how to get better, and they watch game film. If you do only one and not the other, you will not get the same results that you want. You can still get results, but you will not get great results. Okay. So if you have Doug as your coach, right, and Doug says that he's going to give you a game plan after watching your game film, but you don't watch the game film, you'll never be able to execute the way Doug wants you to, because you know yourself, your mannerisms, the way you communicate better than anyone. If you only listen to Doug's coaching, you'll probably improve, but you won't get to the level you want. If you listen to yourself, as cringy and uncomfortable as it is, which it is for the first few times, but then you get used to it and you're like, man, I sound like a weasel and I talk way too fast, but it's all good. You get used to it pretty fast.
Well, you just start a podcast, you get used to it real fast.
Exactly. Right off the bat, right off the bat. If you record yourself and listen to yourself, you'll end up identifying so many things that will allow you to be more successful in your sales. It will allow you to be more successful in serving your clients and serving your prospects. And it's such a vital and important thing to do. Zoom does it for you. Otter does it. There's 1,000 different recording apps for you. It's such an important thing that I feel most people just do not do out of fear. A lot of people go into sales calls, Doug, and think like this is the one and only opportunity. When the reality is 6 months later, they've probably had at least another 30 to 50 of them. And we're talking that on a very conservative scale. You might have 6 months, 300 opportunities, let alone 30 or 50, but every single one to you is the last one, the big one, the most important one. It's
Right.
really not that though. Again, the stakes are so low. I like using this as the framework from the heart surgery. Like my doctor can't look at it and be like, well, Alex is just one of the 75, surgeries we're doing in the next 2 months. He can't do that. Every single one has extremely high stakes. For sales, the stakes are pretty freaking low, man. They're pretty low. So if it doesn't go right, watch your recording and identify it. The other thing that I coach on the recording side of things is being not aggressive in sales, but being confident in sales. What I find, and Doug, I'd love to know if you believe this, but especially if your people are in construction, a lot of people have this mindset that they're afraid of being too aggressive on a call. They're like, oh, if I'm too aggressive, then they'll think I'm like being cocky and they'll think I'm pushing them to make a decision that they don't want to do. And then they won't buy from me. What I found so often is that people forget what perception is, that we don't have any control of the perception. There could be someone listening to this podcast right now and thinking, man, Alex is such a G. He's so smart. And another person, same exact type of person listening to me, there's no difference in what I'm saying, and think, Alex is the worst. This guy doesn't know shit. Why am I listening to this? It's possible. That's why politics are a thing, right? It's not like it's separate. It's the same person talking. One person's like, that guy's amazing. The other person's like, I hate this person. How does that happen? It's because you don't control perception at all. Yeah. So when you are in your mind on a sales call thinking, oh man, am I coming off cocky, arrogant, confident? How am I coming off? All that you're doing is just seeding doubt for yourself, which comes out in your tonality. And when you come out with doubt in your tonality, especially seasoned buyers, they can smell doubt like blood in the water, like a shark. And there's no way to buy from you. People need confidence to buy. That's what it comes down to. They need to know that the other person on the line feels confident that this is the right decision for them. That's why I always tell my clients, don't ask them, do you want to work with me? Don't ask them, what do you think? Don't ask them, hey, do you want to do this? Tell them, say, Doug, this is a no-brainer, man. This is exactly what you're looking for. We should be working together. Some people might think you're being arrogant or cocky. Other people will buy from you because you're being confident. You don't control that. You only control what you say and how you say it with the tonality. And I think that's such an important element to successful sales.
Yeah. And I couldn't agree more. It's one of the first things that we teach, especially on the door-to-door level, is you're the authority. If you know 2 more things than a residential homeowner about solar, about AT&T or whatever you're selling, if you know 2 more things, then you're an authority to them. Those Absolutely. 2 things are going to make you an authority. So that's all it takes. And back to your, I think you're a G. So let's get that out of the way right there. This is great information for my listeners, incredibly tactical. And I love that about it. So I did a podcast. We actually shot one yesterday with Donnie Bovine. He's out of the Fort Worth area. Cool. And he's got his own mastermind as well. And one of the things that he says is you don't have a sales problem, you have a business development problem. Right. And it resonated with me so much because that's what I do. I do business development, and a lot of people say, hey, Doug's the man in sales, or Doug's a great sales trainer. No, not really. I've just developed SOPs, scripts, and systems and operations to support sales teams. You know what I mean? I'm not even that good of a salesperson. I'm just confident about that piece so much that I do consulting on building great sales teams, because I know that if I put all these things in place, I can bring in the candidates, you know what I mean, and turn them into at least average salespeople, and you can build on that.
Yeah, 100%.
You know what I mean? And so talk about your part in the business development piece, because I know you've got your company Prospecting on Demand, but you're not just a marketer. I mean, you're obviously a leader in your community, and you've created that community. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually run 2 companies. One of them is a personal injury attorney marketing agency. It's the same company I've been running since 2010, since I was a freshman in college. And the irony of it is that I didn't even know I was running a company for 4 years. I did come from an entrepreneurial family, but I think my brain was so focused in college on doing like being a great student. Like, it's funny. I graduated magna cum laude from UCF, and no one gives a shit. It hasn't helped me at all in anything in my career. Only thing that matters was my mom was really proud of me. And I wasn't like one of those just naturally smart people. Like, some of the people I graduated with, like, felt like they didn't do shit. They were just able to do it. But I was like the one that was like, I'm up at 5 o'clock studying for the 9 a.m. test. And like, that's how I was able to be successful, which was kind of crappy. But, you know, I was proud of myself then because I really wanted to become either an attorney or go to like a school for like to become a clinical psychologist. And then pretty much right after that, realized like I'm burnt out from school. It's ironic how the work I put in for 4 years, I got completely burnt out to not be able to go to any others. So it took me like an ad, ironically, from Ty Lopez to realize that I'd actually already been running a company for 4 years. Ty's like, this digital marketing thing is like blowing up. And I was like, I'm already doing this. And that's how I started the company 4 years after starting it, which is so strange. It's really weird. And my wife and I really focused on it for about 2 years. And built it out really successfully, got to about $800,000 in revenue a year, profiting maybe like 350 to 400. Nice. But we were just getting bombarded with assholes. Honestly, I'm a very impressionable person. I'm like a wear my heart on my sleeve kind of guy, which I'm totally okay with that. I'm a very emotional.
Exactly what you mean.
I'm the kind of guy that like watches Disney movies and I'm crying because that's just who I am. I like it, feeling the spectrum of emotions. I watch Miami Heat games and get extremely rowdy, probably very unhealthily, but that's just me. Like, that's who I am at the core, you know? So when you run the emotional spectrum, you know, dealing with attorneys who most of the time are not happy ever, it's challenging, you know, and it's very not rewarding. I was very rewarded by the money we were making, but very unrewarded by the dickishness, I guess, of the people.
The client relationships.
And it was even worse, especially because I let my wife become the lead communicator, and she was just getting buried by these people. And I don't manage that well, and I don't handle my emotions well for that. As I'm sure anyone, you know, with a spouse can understand. Yep. Your professionalism is gone very
goes out the window
when someone says shit like your wife. So yeah, it wasn't great. So I hired someone who's a lot more professional than me. From Reach Local that really helped me. That's like a white label marketing company that we hired. They're in Texas, ironically. Everything's Texas in this podcast. But hired that person, helped a lot. And then we just started building our community, prospecting on demand. Because the intention was other entrepreneurs I've spoken to that run agencies, it's always been good communication, but a lot of them really struggled in like sales and business development. And I realized that Cher and I were like not in the norm. Cher is my wife. In 2 years, building basically $1 million company, a little bit under that, was really not in the norm at all. We were talking to people that were 2, 3, 4, 5 years in, and they're like struggling to get to 10K a month. Yeah. And like, they're really having a hard time. And I was like, what did I do? Like, how did I do? And I started reconsidering. And then as I started looking, I would start getting more ads from coaches in the space. We're talking at that time, like Dan Henry, Ryan Dice, Dave Rogan-Moser, Scott Olford. These were all the people at that time that were really big in the space. And I quickly realized like, I'm going to focus on what I'm good at. There was a lot of people focusing on like how to become better at ads, but I'm not that guy. I'm just not ever going to be that guy. I'm a communicator. I'm a salesperson. I'm a connector. And I'm really good at it. So when I watched, I don't want to like throw shade at anyone, so I won't say anyone's name, but I watched a video from pretty well-known ads. And I was watching with my wife and I'm like, babe, I'm way more charismatic than this guy. And I'm definitely more capable at doing sales. We need to learn how to do this. So I bought his program for $1,000. He ended up being an absolutely incredible coach. Very grateful for him. Really helped me. And from that, I was able to build our own community. So in 2 years, we had 250 people buy our $1,000 course, which was mind blowing. And then we started a mentorship side of the program so we can do events, because I love that. It's something I'm really passionate about. We do 4 events a year now. Our next one's in a couple of weeks. And we just have a great community. So it took about 4 years to really get successful and have about 30, 40 clients, and just be really amazing at business development and focusing on how we can bring in subject matter experts for productivity, sales, prospecting, fulfillment, et cetera. So we help marketing agencies and coaches grow. And we really make a unique angle by having a strong filtering process. So I'm actually the opposite of a sales team builder, which is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Reason why is because I did all the sales for my marketing agency and I do all the sales still for my coaching program, but for a purpose, with intention. A lot of people in this space and industries, regardless of what you do, they don't actually have a race that they're running. They just have a milestone number that they want, but they forget like one of the most classic ideologies, which is there's always a bigger fish or there's always a greater mountain to climb. So for example, in the agency space, you'll have this very common, like, I want to hit 10K a month, right? Okay. And then you hit 10K a month. And what's next? Immediately, I want to hit 20. So we spoke earlier about working with the UFC, which we can talk about if you like at any point. But one of the things that's a real big pet peeve for me in the UFC is we have a 5-round fight, 25 minutes, championship level. These guys are bleeding, like their eye socket's busted. Their arm looks like it just got ripped off. And they just went toe to toe, just as valiant warriors, like modern day gladiators. The fight's over, they win. Joe Rogan's first question always is, who do you want to fight next? And you're like, are you kidding me, bro? Like, can maybe my eye cannot be bleeding and I could go back and enjoy the victory I just had? Like, do I really have to talk about what's next? And this is such a cancerous thing as entrepreneurs. And the idea is, what I like to do is build intention. So in POD, we don't work with more than 55, 60 people at a time, not because we can't make more money or I can't hire more coaches, but because I don't need to. So I'm comfortable with contentment and satisfaction. I think people have this really screwed mindset on, if you're not growing, you're dying. And if you're not hustling, you're dying. And as someone that actually almost died and actually watched my dad almost die, I promise you, you're not dying if you're content or satisfied. So I'm the one that do all the sales for POD still, because I get to use it as a leverage point also, where I'm like, did you talk with other competitors of us with the owner? No. How many people are in that program? 300. We have 55. And we're very cognizant about who we bring in. So the thing that I like coaching on business development is intention. So when we have people come in, they're like, I want to hit 50K a month. And we go, why? And they go, because. I'm like, we're not going to settle for because. We need you to consider a little bit more detailed. So we have vision mapping and boards of what they really want and clarity calculators of what you can do with your money. And we find people create so much more fulfillment. There's a journal that one of my coaches told me, Doug, a few years ago that it really hit home. And it's tough to even say on this podcast, because I know a lot of people will listen to this and feel shitty about it, but it's important to be clear on it. And this is a simple journal. At the end of every day for 365 days, 1 year, you write down the main emotion that you felt that day. It is absolutely bonkers how many entrepreneurs' main emotions over 365 days are stress or anxiety, not happiness, satisfaction, fulfillment. Those are like 10% and 90% is stress and anxiety, which is insane. That's not horrible. What you are doing it for. And I realized for me, that was a really common thing. And realizing that when I was told that, just doing a month and realizing 28 of the 30 days is stress, even with the money I make, even with the opportunities I have, I realized something is fundamentally broken. And it was related to the hustle culture and mindset. And that allowed me to be more cognizant of what business development is, which is business development to me in POD is building a business that facilitates your life, not at the expense of it. And that to me is what business development is: intentional understanding of really what you want to live this life, because our life is so precious. Our time is so precious. I don't really want to bring this up, but obviously, this week we had this horrible tragedy. Baldy, with 21 lives taken. I have a 15-month-old son. It's just absolutely horrible. And a lot of the people that lost their loved ones share like how crazy it is. Like time just slips away so fast. Things just happen immediately. You don't know. Like one of the crazy things about my dad's story is he lived, right? So many people I work with, they have the opposite story. Their parent didn't live. They died from a car accident or from cancer, from some terrible thing that happened. And I have the gratitude of having two of those experiences and living through both of them. I got to meet my son. I'm alive and well. I'm okay. My dad got to meet his grandson. He's alive and well. He lived through his son going through heart surgery. Time is so valuable that to spend it feeling shitty most of the time, especially as an entrepreneur, when you are the owner and the person that decides how to feel or what to do, it's not a good thing. So I'm a big believer of intention for business development and clarifying your why, which really allows you to be so much more happy. And ultimately, that's the biggest thing that I want for most people I work with: just happiness, satisfaction, enjoyment, fulfillment. Can that be 365 days? Probably not. Could it be at least a majority? I think so.
No, I couldn't agree more. And I love the journal idea of writing down that emotion at the end of every day. It's incredibly important because one of the things I learned about these emotions that we have as entrepreneurs over the last year is they are a muscle. And I decide which one I'm going to work every day, you know? And one of the things that I've been preaching to my team and that anybody that will listen is disciplines that create two things for me are really big right now: gratitude and presence.
Yes.
So every morning I journal gratitude, right? And I use the G Code app, which is something that Ryan Stewart put together.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you know him. He's in your space.
Yeah, he's great.
And so I use a G Code app for that, and I write down 5 things I was grateful for the day before. And then there's some other functionalities in there and stuff. But at the end of the day, you're starting your day with gratitude. And then my whole company, we post in our, and I probably mention this on every podcast because I think it's just so important. We have a sales flow chat. Everybody can see it. Everybody can post in it. And everybody, or about 90% of the company every morning posts something that they're grateful for. You know, like mine this morning was I'm finishing phase 1 of the Live Hard year today, you know, and so I was grateful for that. And I haven't finished it yet, but I'm going to finish it.
Almost done.
Almost done. And so that's one piece of it. And then what I learned before that, you know, obviously being grateful makes it a lot easier to be present. But early in my career, you know, you're talking about looking up and having done $2 million in a year. Well, I looked up, and in 2014, we did almost $5 million, you know, in commissions. So this wasn't like, you know, this is what we actually got paid, right? But I looked up and I had a 3-year-old daughter, a 2-year-old son, and a newborn. You know what I'm saying? And I couldn't figure out how to be present with them. And so one of the things that muscle I had to flex over time was putting the phone down and being actually present when I was home, you know, you know, I went through a divorce and a reconcile, and now we're getting remarried. But that was kind of a blessing in disguise too, because now it was just me and the kids versus being able to say, hey, you handle the kids. I got this phone call to take, or you handle the kids. I got to return these texts or answer this client or whatever the case is, you know. Now it's just me and them, and they're depending on me.
Yeah.
And so that dialed me in big time.
I'm still struggling with that too. Just because I know the methods doesn't mean that I do it right. You know, like
right.
The classic, the cobbler's, you know, shoes have the kids have the worst shoes, right? It's like, I know the coaching. It doesn't mean I do it perfectly. I'm certainly on no pedestal. There's 2 things that I've done that have really helped me, both from my coach's recommendations. One is he asked me one time, and I don't know if you've heard this, Doug, or anyone else has heard it, but man, it impacted me so hard when he said it. He said, Alex, how does your son spell time? How does your son spell love? And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, Time. And man, I like broke down when he said that.
Oh, that's beautiful. I hadn't heard that before.
Man, it was so intense. I was just like, damn, that's so true, because they're so innocent. You know, they don't understand. He's 15 months old. It's my first child. And it was so impactful to hear that. And then you know, I found out that one thing I do as a human being, and maybe this resonates with you and will resonate with your audience, but my current self punishes my future self a lot. My current self is like, yeah, Doug, I'll do a call with you at 7 p.m. on Friday night. No issue. Then my 7 p.m. self on Friday night's like, you fucking idiot. Why did you do that? You're so stupid. It's crazy though, that I'll do that over and over and over again, right? It's like, I know it, but then I'll still do it. There's something that he recommended that will help me do that, which is we created the idea of like anything past 5 o'clock is Ellie time. That's just my name, my son's name. And he asked me to put a picture of my son and I on my desk. So I have this little Polaroid of my son and I on my desk, and his nieces and nephew, his cousins with him as well. And basically what it is anytime someone's asking me to do something with them past 5 o'clock, I know that I'm making a conscious decision to choose them over Ellie. And that makes it a way harder decision. I will almost never do that. So those are 2 things that I've really learned that have helped me a lot, but that intention's key, man. It really does make a difference for people long-term. But I think it's important also in any podcast that I do that, you know, a lot of times people listen, whether I'm talking about, you know, my life's perspective or my experiences in business or the coaching I've had or the success I've had, to make it really clear that I definitely don't have it all together, that I don't know all the answers, that I'm not perfect, that a lot of the reasons why I'm capable of coaching certain things is because I'm going through it myself on a constant basis. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. That's a really important thing to me, on transparency, to be upfront about what I'm doing well and what I'm not. So I've never, ever put on a pedestal of being perfect, because I'm so incredibly far from that. And yet so incredibly grateful for who I am.
Yeah, 100%. One of our core values of the company is we operate in integrity, you know, and the reason that I created that core value is because I wasn't in integrity in my marriage. And so as soon as my marriage ended and I knew I was the cause for it, was the man in the mirror, then I decided from that moment forward, I wasn't going to operate that way anymore. And so I made it my personal core value. I made it a company core value. And that's been huge. And there's also a science behind it, you know, being the attractive character on social media or in a group of people. They need to know that you struggle with the same things they do, so they can relate to you. And once they relate to you, then they like you. And once they like you and they know you and they trust you, then they'll buy from you, you know. And it's not a business strategy. It's just a life strategy. It makes life so much easier when you put it all out there. Hey, this is me. This is the dumb shit I did. And this is what I learned from it. And this is how you can not do the dumb shit I did. Definitely. And this is how you can execute moving forward. It makes it so much easier to believe that than just somebody constantly saying, I've got it all together. This is how I do it, and follow me. You know, there's no vulnerability. There's no realness there. So thank you for opening up about that. That's huge for our listeners.
Absolutely.
You know, the title is building great sales teams, but a big part of that is the owners, the sales managers, the VPs, and the salesperson's mindset.
I agree.
You know, and we always, it just happens naturally. And I think it's an energy thing. You know, you got good energy. I hope I got some good energy, and then it just connects and we start talking about stuff like this. So really, really appreciate you opening up about that.
Absolutely.
So what's next for you?
Super cool question. Two things that I'm working on. One, my event, June 10th and 11th in Chicago. Got about 50 of our clients coming out. We got a rooftop penthouse. Just really excited about that. I love events because 99% of the time I'm in my home office behind this computer, you know, right under my, you know, logo that's in neon. And it's lonely, you know, it's lonely.
Yeah.
I love our community. I love the people we work with. So, you know, that stuff really excites me. So I'm really, really looking forward to that. That's like the main business thing I'm working on right now. And then personally, I'm working on proving myself once again to do Miami Dolphins media. I'll use this opportunity to just briefly explain what I did when I was younger. So during the time that I was in college and just finishing, I told you I still didn't know that I had an agency, even though I was making like $10K a month. I just thought it was like a side hustle. My brain,
you were hustling.
My brain didn't put a paradigm around that it was a business. So I felt really lost after school, which I think a lot of people do, because I didn't want to go back to school. So before
all the jobs you're being offered, you made more money than
100%. So then, you know, I realized one thing I love doing. I love the Miami Dolphins. I'm a huge sports fan. It's very frustrating to be a Dolphins fan. If you're a Cowboys fan or anyone listening, I know it's probably very frustrating as well. But I can promise you it's more frustrating to be a Dolphins fan.
I was somewhat coherent in 93 and 92. So yeah, you know, I didn't, but I mean, you want to win as an adult, you know what I mean? That's when you really enjoy it. So yeah.
I'm a big Miami Heat fan. They lost last night. It was really shitty, but hopefully we'll beat the Celtics next game. But, you know, I thought it would be really cool to become a media member. And at that time in my life, you know, I thought I didn't know anything about becoming a media member or what it would take to do that. But I had a voracious appetite for achievement. Like I can achieve anything I set my mind to if I am willing to do it. So I, you know, emailed probably 300 different websites to get a byline, which is like the ability to write on a website. I got hooked up with Fansided.
Break that down for us. What is a media member?
So media member is someone that writes articles for a sports team and then covers that team through the season and writes professionally.
Okay, you're dedicated to that sports team.
Exactly.
Oh,
you can
awesome.
do other sports. So I did the UFC also. But I did get a byline for Fansided, which was a Sports Illustrated affiliate, which was really cool. The problem was you made $1 per 1,000 views, which on average, the website would be about 1,000 views. So you make $1 per article, which is horrible, unless you're writing about Tom Brady or Conor McGregor or Ronda Rousey. you're not going to get a lot of views. So obviously Miami Dolphins, you're not getting a lot of views. No one cares about Ryan Tannehill, but I did. I was actually on staff the night Ronda Rousey got knocked out by Holly Holm, which is probably one of the 3 most shocking moments in UFC history. That article had over 1 million views. So made $1,000 from it. It was pretty cool. That was the most amount of money I ever made writing. It's really crazy. It really wasn't, no one was reading my article. They were trying to watch the GIF of her getting KO'd, but I'll take it. I'll take it.
I'll take it.
So after I got the byline, I messaged them like, cool. Like, so how do I get the media badge now? They're like, oh, that's on you. Like, that's on you to do it. So I called the Miami Dolphins media. It is required by the NFL that every media member, every public relations member has a phone number. I just called every single day to the Miami Dolphins for 2 months straight before training camp. And every single day, the same assistant would pick up and say, Jason's not available. Jason's not available. Jason's not available. Give me every objection in the book. But I knew that I was willing to hear no more times than they were willing to say it. I knew that for sure, that I was just going to keep going, and I'd break them down. And then one day she finally said, yeah, Jason's available. I'm going to patch you through to his office. Now, suddenly after, I don't know, let's say for the sake of the story, it was 60 calls. I don't really remember how many it was. Could have been 12, could have been 80, but whatever it was, I don't remember. It was a long time ago, 8 years ago. So finally patched me through, and we get that elevator music, hold music, you know, do. And as soon as that happened, I had a little bit of a panic attack because I realized, holy shit, I've been working
this
for this. I have no idea what I'm going to say. Picks up the phone, and I think it was something along these lines. Hi, Alex, Dolphins fan, Sports Center, media, please. He goes, you're credentialed, see you on Sunday. Bam. And that was it. And I drove over the next day for training camp, and I got my media badge. I still have it today for 2014. And that accomplishment, that feeling of having it and looking at it, was one of the 2 most incredible moments of my life. 3, let's say, son being born, by far the number 1, being married, number 2. And then, you know, this media badge, it was just unbelievable. It blew my mind. Like, I created this. No one did anything. I did this by myself. No one helped me. I did this from tenacity, and I felt so accomplished. And that feeling of being accomplished is something so special. It really is. So all this to say, in terms of fulfillment, I want to do it again. I don't have a byline. I don't even want to write, but I do want to cover the Dolphins again. So it has nothing to do with money or desire. It's just, I want to do it. So I'm working on that right now. I've been calling again. It feels like I'm back to where I was 8 years ago, just calling and calling and calling. But I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to send you a message soon, and I'm going to have that media badge for 2022 because I say so. And that's what I'm working on personally. That has nothing to do with money, has nothing to do professionally. It's because I want to do it, and I'm going to make it happen.
That's awesome. And I'll make sure that I follow you on all forms of social media so I can make sure I see that when it happens. And then I'll be like, I know this guy. He did a podcast with me. Yep. But you know what's cool about that is, for some people, it's an Ironman or a marathon. You know what I mean? For some people, it's climbing this mountain or doing, you know, this experience or whatever the case is. And for you, it's a media badge. You know, most people would say, well, why? You know, that's not your career. You're not going to, you know, go to the Press Hall of Fame or whatever it's called doing that. You know what I mean? But it's very much like one of those things, you know.
100%. It's for pure fulfillment, for something that I want to do. One of my great regrets was when I lived in Orlando, the Dolphins Stadium is 4.5 hours away. So I only went to one home game to do the media, even though I had the badge, because I didn't want to drive, which in retrospect now I'm like, what an idiot. But you know, I was I think 21 years old. Like, I didn't want to drive. So here I am, 30 years old now. I want it, man. I want to make it happen. You got to make it happen. So that's just something I'm working on. No purpose other than for fulfillment. Business is good. Life is good. I'm alive. My son is great. It's all good, man. I'm working on the event. It's going to be great. But that's something I want to do personally.
That's amazing. I love that goal. Everybody needs something like that in their life. You know what I mean? And you can call it a hobby. You can call it a milestone you want to hit, or, you know, it's a media badge in this case. But everybody needs something like that, you know, that they're passionate about and they want to go after. So that's huge. So tell us, if one of the listeners wants to get a hold of you, what's the best way to do that? And you said you had your event coming up June 10th and 11th. Anything else around that? Because you said you had 4 events a year. Are they all centered around the Prospecting on Demand Mastermind?
Yeah, all of them are centered around, you know, growing your entrepreneurial business, mostly agency owners, coaches, and consultants. We coach sales and prospecting and productivity and business development, the whole 9 yards. If you're listening to this after June, our next events will be in September. It'll be our bigger event called POD Live. It'll be about 100 to 200 people in Tampa. And then the last event is event right before the holidays in December, usually at my home, my lakeside home. Yeah, I'm super rich. It's amazing. I'm kidding. But it is great. We have a great time. And those are the 2 events we'll have. And if you ever want anything inside of, what we do virtually, we do shows every single week. And nice. Our podcast, I'll definitely have you, Doug. It would be great to have you on ours every Thursday at 11 a.m. the Get More Client Show. Easiest way to get to me, probably prospectingondemand.com. That's my website. You can follow me on facebook.com/Schlinsky, which is SCHLINSKY. I have the blue check mark, so I'm obviously very important. No, I'm kidding. But those are the best ways you can find me. And I go in the speaking circuit a lot too. So if you go to any events, you might see me there coaching the one call close training.
Awesome. Yeah. And damn, we didn't have time to get into that. And I want to hear all about that. But yeah, maybe we can have you on again and we can cover just that. I imagine all that writing went into that blue check.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I also paid for it, bluntly. Like, I don't want anyone to be
Well, it's both, from what I understand.
Yeah, there was someone that reached out to me that said he can get me featured on Entrepreneur Magazine and Forbes. And then he knows the hookup in Facebook that once you're on those, then you can get to the blue check mark. So I think I paid him $6,000 for that, like 3 or 4 years ago. Got the article on Entrepreneur, which was my dad's story. Got an article on Forbes, which was about team building, ironically. And then I got the blue check mark, which at the time I was thinking wouldn't be that beneficial, but it's pretty crazy how people's reaction is to it. Like, oh my God, you have a blue check mark? It makes you so important. I'm like, not really, but okay.
It shouldn't, but it is. It is what it is.
It's social proof, that's what it is. But I always like being upfront. Like, I straight up paid for it. That's the reality. That's what it was. It did help that I had a media badge with, Sports Illustrated. It did help that I was on Entrepreneur and Forbes magazine, but I paid for it. That's what it is.
Well, there's a system to it. You know what I mean? And unless you go viral, you got to follow the system. You know what I mean? You got to put the work in, like everything else, People
always ask me to replicate it, but I actually have no idea because that guy completely disappeared off face of the earth. I think he got banned from Facebook because he was selling this service that I don't think was allowed. So
gotcha.
We got in on the bottom floor. So I don't even get people verified.
Yeah, if the social media overlords are listening.
Yeah,
don't listen to any of that.
Like, I'll get you also verified on Instagram for an extra 1,000. And like an idiot, I didn't do that. I should have for sure, because I have no idea how to get verified on Instagram. If you are watching and you know how, tell me. I'll pay you money. That's cool.
Yeah, I have a few contacts that can help you with that. And it is a legit process. There's no back doors or anything.
Not black hat, back door. Yeah. I know Mark, bro. I know Zuckerberg. Don't worry. I got you.
Yeah. Typically when you get verified on Facebook, Instagram should follow, a month, 2 months,
I've had it
3 months
for like
later.
3 years. So I have no idea.
Yeah. You should have no issues. I'll get you that contact ASAP.
My man.
All right. I appreciate it, Alex. This has been a great podcast, covered some amazing tactical stuff. And I love that you have it so condensed. You've obviously spoke a lot in front of a lot of entrepreneurs, so you know exactly how to deliver it. So I appreciate that. And then we got into some of the mindset stuff too. So that was huge. Thank you so much for being on our show.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, man. And all the listeners, thanks so much. Appreciate you.
All right, guys, let's get building.
Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of Building Great Sales Teams. We sure do appreciate it. If you haven't done so already, make sure you're subscribed to the show wherever you consume podcasts. This way you'll get notifications as new episodes become available. Remember, great sales teams are not recruited. They are built block by block. Until next time.